Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today we are talking about the connections you use from your jig to your leader. This is a very important bit and a lot of people actually kind of miss it. And this is what we're going to cover today. Now, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. This channel talks about the hows and whys of fishing and covers everything from big game, ultralight, everything in the middle, including fly fishing. Today we're talking about connection point for jigs, specifically fast and slow jigging. Now I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about here. Let's get that off first. And this is the box that I use for my jigging. Actually had to buy these packs here because right after I have them, I just dump them in here. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of things here. Swivels of different types, of course, my split rings, as you can see here, different sizes, swivels of different types and sizes, and quick links, but one doesn't belong there, and yeah, all sorts of just things to connect my jig with. Each and every single one of them do a different thing, and also depends on the size of the tackle I'm using, the fish I'm targeting, and I'm going to explain why. Okay, so first and foremost, there are other videos that talk about this in the channel and you can check them out. I've actually lumped everything up in playlists so that you would be able to find them easier. This one will be included in the jigging specific playlist. Now let me show you a jig here. Okay, so I actually briefly showed this in the previous video, and you could see that we have a split ring, solid ring that holds the assist hook, and we have a swivel. The main purpose of the swivel is twofold. Firstly, it gives distance from the split ring to the leader, which is going to be at this end right here. That's a very important thing because most fish would strike where the perceived head is. And as mentioned in the previous video on how to improve your jigging, the fish will perceive where the head is according to the movement, or where the movement or the direction of the jig actually is going. So if the jig is actually sliding and it's going this way, that's when you give it slack. They will perceive this part to be the head. Now, if you're moving, lifting your rod, reeling in, and flicking the rod, or flicking the tip of the rod, the movement of the jig would be going up and then it will flutter. And that's how slow jigs are designed, the flutter. Now, on a fast jig, you're pulling and it's always constantly moving like that. You're pulling, it's going up. So the head, which is here, is always moving in that direction. Okay, you have your assist hook there. You can have one or two, and the fish is always going to strike the head. Now, you're moving your jig up and down on a fast jig, and it's moving, in theory, it's zigzagging like that, and that's when the fish hit. Now remember, you're constantly reeling and pumping the rod. Now, a lot of bite offs happen when you have kind of like a short, we're talking about the fish actually cutting the whole jig up. Now when you're doing that, sorry, that was my air cooler. Summer here now, it's really hot, so I have the thing on. Anyway, so once you have your jig rigged like that, you have your split ring here and you have your solid ring there. Your line is tied onto the solid ring, and you can see that it's the distance between your hook and your solid ring is actually quite short. If you put a swivel there, let's take one of the old ones here. Okay, you have some distance from the hook to your leader. It might not be much, but believe it or not, that helps in this regard. Okay, having your leader a bit farther out will help you a lot. Now, for that, there are special swivels, such as this one. As you can see, the smaller ring on top is where you put your leader and you put your assist hook here. Either you have an assist hook that you could loop in like that, or you splice your assist hook to that ring, similar to how it's done here. Okay, there are also swivels such as this one from CB1 that takes it a step forward. It's not only that. Okay, so this is the illustration right here, and this is the split ring, and this is the solid ring. Now it takes it a step further by actually having a solid ring installed on the ring of the swivel, giving you a lot more freedom of movement for the assist hook. And they all work. Okay, it really depends. Now the only reason why I don't really use these a lot is because of the price. As you can see, they're actually kind of expensive. This one was 30, I believe. So it is 30 and you only get 2. Okay, you get 3 for 23.10, at least in our prices here. So this is the only and this has an extra functionality which I really like. This I could use for fast and slow. I could also use this for fast and slow jigging. It really depends on the type of jig that I use, and I'll explain that later on. Okay, now there's also this right here. I have the smaller ones and I had to buy the bigger ones for this video. Now this is a pear-shaped solid ring. Whatever you see there is exactly what the shape is. It's 600 pounds capacity, so pretty significant there. Well, the thing with this is that I actually kind of not use it for slow jigging, and I'll give you the reason later. Okay, swivels, like I explained earlier. Okay, and obviously just the solid ring. Now let's go to the jig and I'll explain why. If you're using a system like this where you actually have a swivel, the split ring plays a very major role. It has to be strong, really strong. And the reason for that is because automatically it becomes load bearing. What do I mean by that? Normally on fast jigging, you could just tie off just like that. You put your leader there. And what happens is that the split ring does not load, does not carry any load, because from your solid ring, it's a straight line of pull. If you use a split ring and attach something there, like so, the split ring carries the load. Now, if you're doing that, there's 2 things that you need to look at. First and foremost would be your drag management. You have to be spot on, especially with slow jigging where you're actually using lighter line. Whatever connection you're putting there should also be able to carry the load, because remember, that's your origin of pull. It still forms a straight line and the fish would not be able to shake it off in theory because it's still on a straight line. So the weight of the jig cannot be used as a leverage point. The difference in all of these is quite simple: restriction. Okay, and this is why I mentioned that there are several types that you could use. Now, for solid rings, not only is it close, but you also have to consider that the solid ring doesn't really move. Okay, putting a swivel there, which gives it more rotation, makes the jig move more erratically. So there are times when you want your jig to flutter more, you use a ball bearing swivel. Okay, and which is the reason why I have it here in the first place. I have ball bearing swivels of all sizes. Putting something like a swivel like this, you have to be very careful about the swivel that you choose. This is not an ordinary brass swivel. It doesn't have the winds on the outside. Those are actually the weakest swivels you can buy. So for jigging, I would kind of stay away from that. For slow jigging especially, what happens here, this is a bit more restrictive. Okay, so it's not gonna wobble as smooth. It's probably gonna wobble stronger or more than you would with a solid ring, but it will wobble more. Okay, with the solid ring, maybe it would wobble just like that, but with the swivel there, it would wobble more. If you're not careful, it spins, and fish kind of don't like a spinning jig. So swivels do that, and you have to be very careful. It has to be this kind of shape, not the brass barrel swivels. Okay, so that shape. What this does, and take particular attention. When it's new, it'll give you a lot of spin. While it's old, when it's old, it hangs up a bit. So just be very, very critical of that. Some people like swivels, some people don't. For me, it's a matter of actually not me choosing. It would be what the fish respond to. So I have a lot of those. Now, here's an illustration of just the solid ring and the split ring. As you can see there, of course, the movement is restricted. Advantage of swivels, of course, is that you'll get less line twists if it twists more, okay? And then with this, it will make your jig flutter a bit less. Fish will respond to these in different ways, okay? And for me, it's really up to the fish, okay? Now, this contraption right here is what I connect over here if there's a lot of toothy critters. Now with this, and I believe I actually have a video of how to make this. So this kind of acts like an extension, and your line is quite far. Now, it has some effect on how the jig moves, but sometimes when there are toothy fish around, it's kind of like an option that you have to take, otherwise you lose a lot of jigs. Okay, so that's another one. Now a smaller version is of course this one. Okay, I made it from a stinger extension from owner. So from this I made it into this, and you can see that the swivel is actually integrated. Obviously I don't use this for big stuff. It's only for my micro jigging, but this would be kind of like the full-sized version when I go fishing in deeper water. There are specialized shapes such as this pear-shaped ring. There's also an 8 shape, and the purpose of this is to actually have your knot on here. Now, it's okay for fast jigging for me. Use this on fast jigs, and what happens is you build your assist hook there. Okay, so instead of this, it'll have that. Now for fast jigging, it's good because it protects your knot. But again, if there is a chance of toothy fish, I would actually rather just use a swivel such as this or this rather than have something like this. I have smaller ones of these that I use for micro jigging, and I feel that for these, especially on the smaller sizes, they'd be a bit more useful for micro jigs than they would be for bigger jigs, because you're using a thick leader most times for slow jigging or fast jigging. For slow jigging, again, I'd rather use a swivel. For micro jigging, it becomes kind of necessary to protect your knot from the jig itself, because what happens while it's fluttering is that there's always a chance for a solid ring to be knocked in by your solid ring, and there's friction. So I mean, for me, kind of a specific purpose shape. Now the 8 shaped solid ring, which I don't have because I really don't feel the need to use them, they're good at separating your leader from your split ring assembly, which is good. The problem there is that the sheer bulk of it, they come in different sizes, but they're mostly big, and this is the reason why I don't really have them in my fishing system. All right, so yeah, that's it for connections. I really hope that it clears things up for a lot of people. Again, to recap, I have different types of connections up front here, just to give me separation between the hook, and when the fish bites, you have a little bit of protection because of the gap, as opposed to just a solid ring. Now I use that when there's a chance of toothy fish around. If there's a lot and I keep on losing jigs, I would use something like this, and it saves about 50% of my jigs, which is still a better chance than 100%. And I use different types of swivels to give the jig a bit more action. The problem there is that also it, for some jigs that are kind of bent, it spins the jig, and if it's not balanced correctly, it also spins the jigs, and that's kind of a problem, especially when the fishing's difficult, because most fish don't like something that's spinning for some weird reason. If you actually have some experience of fish biting a jig that spins, comment below. That'll be a very good discussion. Also, for solid rings, of course, it's the usual that we use, and it is something that restricts the movement, and sometimes the fish, or most times the fish, would actually tell you which one to go with. There is no guideline of exactly what you should put on there, but there are more and more anglers that are putting swivels there. Now, solid rings for the most part are usually silver, and there are some, such as this one, that are black. I like the black part there because it's not something that the fish would target in the very last second and cut my line. So there's another reason why I like using these black swivels, and this is kind of like my regular thing. So if you look closely in some videos where I'm fishing, I know I don't show a lot of those, but you would find a black swivel there more than. All right, so that's it for today, guys, for this video. I hope you learned something, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.